the music isn't meant to take away from the Mass. It's meant to complement it. It's meant to express what's going on in the Mass. And I find a great beauty in that. And for me, that's prayer. That's how I focus on what's happening in the Mass. And that's kind of how I've actually grown in my faith.
Hey guys, welcome back to Bold. My name is Isabel, and in this episode of Bold, we have Nathan Schafsnitz, a University of St. Thomas junior who's studying music with a concentration in the organ. In this episode of Bold, we talk about him playing the organ, what that journey's been like, the highs and lows that come with it, and how playing the organ has impacted his faith life. But before we get started, make sure to like and subscribe. Check us out on Instagram and YouTube at Max Studio UST to stay in the loop and get a behind-the-scenes sneak peek at everything that we're working on. Now, let's jump into this episode of Bold with Nathan. Hey Nathan, how are you?
I'm good, how are you?
I'm doing fantastic. Thank you so much for being here.
Absolutely.
Give us your little elevator speech. Tell us who you are.
All right. My name is Nathan Schafsnitz. I'm a junior here, studying music currently.
And you play the organ.
And I play the organ, studying under Dr. Young-Suk.
Nice. Okay, cool. So, do you love the organ?
I love it. I love it.
Good.
Enjoy it.
Awesome. Can you tell me like how you first started like with the organ? How was that journey?
So I grew up in a small town parish, and I remember we were visiting my father, who was working close to Maryland at the time, and so we attended this bigger church. It was Wednesday night, and I just remember sitting there in the pews. I think the organist was playing the prelude, and I just remember the sound coming over, and I don't know, I just had this realization. I was like, that is beautiful. I'd love to do that. And that's really it was just a Wednesday night.
And that's how it all started?
That's how it all started.
No way.
Yeah.
Wait. So was this like your first time playing the organ, like listening to the organ?
I knew of it, but I wasn't really used to it since I'm from a small town parish. We had a piano and a lady who played the guitar. So it was known to me, but I wasn't used to that sound on a regular basis.
Interesting. And what do you think, what was it about that moment, that Wednesday night that...
You know, I don't know if I can really explain it. I just remember sitting there, and it was just this realization. I was like, wow, that's beautiful. I've always been in love with music, but not exactly church music at that time. So that was my conversion. Just sitting in a pew.
That's beautiful. Nice. And so then what happened next?
What happened next, we eventually moved up there, and that became our parish. My mother had put me in choir when we joined that church, and against my will, might I add. So I was in choir, and I decided to walk up to him after Mass one day, and I'm like, I want to start taking lessons. Can you teach me? And he's like, yeah, sure, why not? I'll start you this date. And so what I did from that point was I had no clue. I didn't know anything about music. So what I did was I took the scale of I took a C major scale. I printed it out. I set it in front of me, sat at a keyboard, and just kind of played and learned the notes. And then I took a Bach prelude and note for note. That's how I taught myself how to read music. And by the time I finished that prelude, I had it memorized at that point, and the rest is history.
Wait, that's crazy. Wait, okay, let's rewind. How old were you when you first started like learning the organ?
When I first started learning, 11.
No way.
Yeah.
And like, that's so interesting that you like have stuck with it all this time. Because like when I picked up something at like 11, I'm still not doing it now. You know what I mean? Like That's not very common.
You know, I had a few hobbies, but that I mean, I was just drawn towards it. I've always had a love for music. At the time I didn't know it was going to be sacred music, but the more I dived into it, the more I fell in love with it, and I was like, I want to do this. I want more. I want to learn more. I want to grow in this. And then I got involved. So it wasn't just a matter of taking lessons. It was actually being put in an environment where I was using the skills I've been practicing. So I started to play at the historic chapel of St. Peter. It's a small church on the side of a hill in Harpers Ferry. And so there was a lot of learning on the spot. I had a lot of masses where I felt sick afterwards, and I just wanted to puke.
Really?
Yeah,
Oh.
but that's part of the learning process. Thankfully, it was a small church that was only open once a week, and it was a small organ. But yeah, so I was not only was I learning the instrument, but I was also using what I learned to. I was in the mass. I was doing it. So that is kind of like why it stuck with me, and then it was like just on to the next Sunday, and it just grew and grew.
Interesting. Okay, can you talk about? Do you remember the first time you played the organ at mass, and how was that like?
That was okay. So thinking back, there was this little piece I had spent probably months practicing. I was still a beginner at music in general at this point, so it wasn't anything like fancy. But I remember, when you're at the organ and there's 1,000 people behind you and you're not used to that setting, you suddenly hyper focus on everything and your senses go, and. So, you start to play, you're like trembling, 11-year-old me, 12-year-old me was like, and then you make a mistake and you're like, everyone heard, but no one knows. But it's a matter of repetition and playing and just getting used to that environment. Now I can go into a church, even a church that I've never played in before, and it's, what's the music I have to play? I look at it, of course, after practicing, and I can go and play, and it's another day. It's another day. So I've definitely grown a lot in that aspect.
Of course, I imagine. That's so funny. Aw. And then how did you decide to major in it? You know what I mean? Because it's something different than having a hobby than deciding no, this is something I want to study for 4 years. Mm-hmm.
Well, that was a pretty big decision because, I wasn't sure if it was just a glorified hobby. I'm like, is this for me? Am I doing the right thing? Or is this just a glorified hobby? And you each day, even now, I'm still learning my vocation, my calling, and right now that seems to be playing the organ. So I don't think that that's something that has ever really stopped. It's like, am I doing this? Yeah, I'm doing it. So, but I'm trying to think back to a moment in which I was like, yeah, this is actually, I do remember a moment when I was like, yeah, I had spent a week at Rice. It was a National Pipe Organ Encounter Advanced. There were 12 students from across the United States who all gathered at Rice, and there were a bunch of teachers or organists, really well-known organists from the Houston area who joined, and just, they were such an inspiration. I was like, yeah, this is definitely what I want to go into. So I didn't know what college I was going to go to at the time when I had made the decision to go ahead and do this. But my sister, who moved down here, she had heard about the University of St. Thomas, and she's like, why don't you come down and visit? And so I did, and that's how I got to know the university. And she's like, why don't you go ahead and apply? And I already knew the professor here for 2 or 3 years at that point, and I really liked her. I liked her teaching style, so I was like, why not why not go for it?
And how's that experience been here at UST?
You never stop learning. It's really good. It has its high points, it has its low points, but you just got to keep going with it and stick to it. I'm not gonna lie. It's tough, but it has its high moments. It has its low moments, but you have to keep your focus on why you're doing it and stick it through.
Why is that why?
What's that?
Why is the why? What's your why?
What's my motivation? I think it's playing at Mass, and having an understanding of the Mass and being able to assist in music and assist in the beauty of the Mass. So what I do is I don't. The music isn't meant to take away from the Mass. It's meant to complement it. It's meant to express what's going on in the Mass, and I find a great beauty in that. And for me, that's prayer. That's how I focus on what's happening in the Mass, and that's kind of how I've actually grown in my faith. Really? Mm-hmm.
Interesting. So by playing at the Mass, you feel like you've grown?
I have, but at the same time, it is. You do tend to. So for me, it was a way to keep focused because my mind is always going somewhere in Mass. So for me, it helped me focus on what's going in the Mass. It helped me understand the Mass better, because I think for Catholics we go to church on Sunday, but you say the prayers because you know them, but once you sit down and you realize what's going on in the Mass and how it works, it adds a whole new dimension to the Mass and your faith. And with that, playing music every Sunday, you have to be sure that it doesn't just become a job, because that's the unique thing about playing for the church. It's that it's your job, but you're also, you don't stop being a Catholic when you play. Like when it becomes your job, you still have to. So you have to kind of separate them a little. Where was I going with it? You have to separate them and remember to grow in your faith, while also growing in your music ability. And putting them together, but knowing that you still have to strengthen this while you're practicing music and strengthening your performance. You also have to step aside and practice your faith.
Yeah, because like when you're at Mass and you're playing, is it like you're focusing, what am I going to play next? What am I doing? Or are you like focusing on the Mass? Like in that moment, what's on your mind?
It's a good mix of both. Okay. For me, it was a way to pay attention to what's going on in the Mass, but sometimes, just life, you get in a routine and it's what do I have to do next? And you have to be careful not to fall into this is just a routine, this is just a job. What do I have next? What am I? Because you do it so many times. You have to remember not to forget why you're doing it and where you're what your role is in assisting in the Mass. And you can't forget the Mass is happening because you're occupied with music.
And what do you tell yourself? How do you to be present in that moment?
For me, it's definitely within the consecration of the Mass. So music is involved in the consecration, but I feel like that's a time for me to, some practices that I do, I don't sit on the bench during the whole of consecration. I step off the bench and I kneel when they kneel. I respond. I try and sing along. Sometimes singing and playing is hard, but that's another way in which I participate.
No, that's perfect. That's beautiful. And then how does you playing in the Mass, how does that strengthen your faith life? Or has it?
No, it certainly has. Just understanding the liturgy and the why behind, when you grow up, and it just seems like a habit. But when you get to understand what's actually going on, and the beauty and tradition and symbolism that lies underneath what you go to Mass and you see as just attending a Mass versus understanding and knowing the Mass and truly being present at the Mass. You have to know what's going on in the Mass, what we're celebrating that day, why we're celebrating, and then you tailor the music to what's going on in the Mass. So it has brought to me a completely different understanding of my faith.
Yeah, that's so interesting. Nice. I like that. And then what is some of your favorite pieces to play? Do you have one?
There's a transcription. It's called Roshi Medra. It's on a Welsh tune by Ralph Vaughan Williams. That's really beautiful. I like to pull that out every now and again.
Can you sing it?
I'm not gonna sing.
Come on.
No, it's instrumental. So it's an instrumental piece.
Hum it.
Hum it. No.
Oh, Nathan. Boo. Okay, I have a hard question for you. What life lesson has playing the organ taught you? Or what have you learned outside of just having this talent of playing the organ?
All sorts of things. I'm still working on time management. I think it's all part of growing up and being a college student, having a job, having classes. You learn how to be responsible, how to take things one thing at a time, and focus on that. Have a goal, set goals, keep them in mind, and work towards those goals. That has been a major area that I've definitely grown in, and I'm still certainly growing in that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does make sense, of course. And then, so you're studying music. What do you want to do when you graduate?
When I graduate, I'd like to continue what I'm doing now, which is assisting in and planning music, playing in a parish on a regular basis. I'd like to be an organist / music director.
Nice. Okay, because you're doing that right now at St. Anthony's, correct?
Correct.
How's that been?
So I'm the associate coordinator of music at St. Anthony's, and what I do is assist in planning music for Sunday masses and feast days. I play weddings and funerals, help brides coordinate their music for their wedding. So
That's so fun.
It is fun. You get a lot of interesting suggestions. I've had Celine Dion before. And I'm like, that's great for the reception. But yeah.
Have you done it?
No. Oh. We have to keep things sacred.
Of course.
Gotta keep things sacred.
Of course.
Call to mind it, and that's another thing that I've learned is that some people just don't know, and it's preserving the sacredness of the liturgy through music is what I've learned too.
Wait, that's so interesting.
Yeah.
Talk a little bit more about that, please.
Liturgy and music are certainly definitely intertwined. The church has a long history of music, and it grows and it develops, and it plays quite a substantial role within the Mass. Though the Mass, of course, can be done without music, but adding to the beauty and understanding the liturgy, it can, even in prayer, it can help lift people's minds to God, which is, and what is being done in the Mass, which is which is a priority as a church musician. You're there to assist in the Mass.
Like, what's your favorite part about playing the organ?
My favorite part about playing the organ isn't even in the many great works of organ repertoire. I love listening to organ music, but I think one of the greatest things about playing music is leading a congregation in singing, because as Christians, as Catholics, we're called to participate, we're called to be a community, and part of that is singing, and when you're the one who is leading an entire congregation, especially a congregation that sings, it's so powerful, and there's something to be said about people uniting their voices to praise God, and something about that that's also another reason why I keep doing, that motivates me. That's like so powerful when people sing and participate in the Mass, and when you're the one leading that, it's truly an honor to do that.
Yeah, that's so beautiful. Whoa, that's awesome. And what's next for you?
What's next?
Got
a couple more years of school, and then I'll leave it to God.
Leave it to God. Beautiful. Okay. All right. Well, Mr. Nathan, thank you so much for being here.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Of course. Thanks so much for watching. Stay bold, my friends.